At Ella Gray's funeral, every person in the cemetery thought Jack Hunter was grieving. They saw the black suit. They saw the shaking shoulders. They saw the way he knelt beside Ella's 7-year-old daughter and promised, in a voice soft enough to break hearts, that he would never let her be alone. What they did not see was the smile he hid beneath the rain. Because while the coffin was still being lowered into the wet cemetery earth, Jack was not thinking about the woman he had lived with for 3 years. It was not thinking about the child standing beside him in a dress too big for her small body. It was thinking about a number. 500,000 libras. £500,000. Ella Gray had died with no parents left, no siblings, no loud family ready to fight, and no husband on paper. She had left behind one little girl, Lena, who still slept with a nightlight and could not even spell the word inheritance. To everyone else, Lena was an orphan. To Jack, she was an obstacle. And by the time the mourners turned away from the grave, by the time the rain washed the last handful of salt from the black umbrellas, Jack had already decided exactly how to remove her from the money her mother had died trying to protect. He had a forged marriage certificate. He had a fake handwritten will. He had 2 paid witnesses who knew enough to lie and not enough to understand the danger. He had rehearsed every tear, every trembling breath, every gentle line he would deliver to neighbors, nurses, clerks, and eventually a court. In his mind, it was already over. A dead woman could not argue. A child could not fight. And a man who looked like a grieving partner could get away with almost anything. Jack Hunter was wrong. He had not counted on the one person Ella had trusted more than anyone in the world. A solicitor named Evelyn Shaw. A woman with silver at her temples, ice in her voice, and a promise she had made to a dying mother that she intended to keep. By the end of the case, Jack would lose the money, the lie, the image, and the life he had built from stolen sympathy. But on the morning of the funeral, he still believed he was untouchable. London was drowning in cold November rain. Brookwood Cemetery, out in Surrey beyond London's edge, lay beneath a sky the color of old steel. The trees had shed most of their leaves, and the few that remained clung to black branches like tired hands refusing to let go. Wind pushed needles of rain sideways through the rows of headstones. It rattled umbrellas, soaked trouser legs, and turned the grass around the open grave into a dark, sucking mud. Ella Gray's funeral was small enough to make the silence feel cruel. There were no overflowing flower arrangements. No distant cousins wiping their eyes. No childhood friends flying in from abroad. Cancer had taken 18 months to kill Ella, but loneliness had been working on her for much longer. Her parents had died within 3 years of each other when Lena was a toddler. Her relatives were scattered, estranged, or gone. Most of the people who came were nurses from the oncology ward, a neighbor from the flat downstairs, a receptionist from Lena's school, and 2 women from a support group Ella had attended when she was still strong enough to sit upright for more than an hour. They stood in a loose half-circle, heads bowed, coats dripping, voices low. Lena stood nearest the coffin. She was 7, but grief had made her look smaller. Her black dress had been bought in a rush. The sleeves hung over her hands and the hem brushed the wet grass. Someone had tried to braid her hair, but the rain had loosened it, and damp curls stuck to her cheeks. In her fist she clutched a tiny woolen pendant shaped like a star. Ella had knitted it during one of her better weeks, when the medication still allowed her fingers to work. Lena pressed it so hard into her palm that the wool left an imprint. She did not cry loudly. That was what made it worse. Every now and then her mouth opened, as if a question had risen inside her, but no sound came out. She looked at the coffin, then at the grave, then at the adults around her, trying to understand why everyone was behaving as if something had ended when she had never agreed to let anything end. A nurse named Helen leaned toward the neighbor and whispered, "Poor little thing. She keeps asking when her mom is coming home." The neighbor covered her mouth with a gloved hand. "Who will take her now?" "Jack, I suppose. He has been there all along." At the sound of his name, several eyes moved toward him. Jack Hunter stood just behind Lena, tall, handsome, and composed in a way that made people trust him. His black overcoat was expensive but not flashy. His shoes were polished despite the mud. His dark hair was combed back with careful restraint. He held a black umbrella over Lena instead of himself, so rain dotted his shoulders and slid down his face like tears. It was perfect. He had learned, years ago, that grief had a shape people expected to see. Though much emotion made them uncomfortable. Though little made them suspicious. But the right amount, a wet eye, a clenched jaw, a hand pressed briefly to the mouth, could make strangers create a whole noble story for you. And they did. He never left her, someone murmured. 3 years together, wasn't it? He took her to appointments. He saw him driving her home more than once. And now he is taking on the child. Not many men would do that. Jack heard every word. He lowered his head to hide the faint satisfaction moving across his face. When the vicar finished the last prayer, Lena finally made a sound. It was small and sharp, not quite a sob. Mammy. The word moved through the mourners like a blade. Jack waited 1 beat. 2. Long enough for everyone to feel the helplessness of the moment. Then he stepped forward and crouched beside her, lowering himself into the mud without hesitation. A good man would not care about his trousers. A good man would care only about the child. He placed one hand gently on top of Lena's head. Don't be afraid, sweetheart, he said. His voice was low, warm, almost trembling. The kind of voice that could make a room forgive anything. Mommy loved you more than anything in the world. And I am here now. He will look after you. I promise. You will never be alone. Lena turned her pale face toward him. She wanted to believe him because she had no one else. That need, that terrible innocent need, made something flicker in her eyes. Jack brushed a raindrop from her cheek with his thumb. The women in the support group began to cry. The nurse from oncology looked away, overcome. The neighbor whispered, God bless him. Jack bowed his head as if he could not bear their praise. But his fingers tightened once, very lightly, against Lena's damp hair. Not in comfort. In possession. The funeral ended quickly. Rain has a way of shortening grief in public. People stepped forward, touched the coffin, murmured a final goodbye, then drifted away toward the lane where cars waited with misted windows and ticking engines. Jack accepted condolences with perfect humility. I don't know how I will manage, he told Helen, his voice cracking in just the right place. But Ella trusted me. You have to do right by them both. Aileen squeezed his arm. She was lucky to have you. No, Jack said, looking toward the grave. I was lucky to have her. He watched the line work. He watched Helen's expression soften. By the time he guided Lena toward the black sedan, half the people there would have testified under oath that Jack Hunter was a devoted partner and a grieving father figure. That was exactly what he wanted. Inside the car, the world changed. The doors closed with a soft, expensive thud. The rain became a dull tapping against glass. The driver pulled away from the cemetery, and the last umbrella disappeared behind the rear window. Jack waited until they turned onto the main road. Then his face emptied. He leaned back, loosened his tie with one sharp tug, and exhaled as though the funeral had been nothing more than a demanding performance. The wet-eyed tenderness vanished. The sorrow left his mouth. What remained was a look Lena had seen once before, late at night, when Jack thought she was asleep and had stood in the kitchen staring at her mother's medical file. It was not sadness. It was hunger. Lena sat in the corner of the back seat with the woolen star in both hands. Is Mommy cold? She whispered. Jack looked at her reflection in the rearview mirror. For a moment, annoyance flashed across his face. Then he remembered himself. The driver could hear. No, sweetheart, he said. She is at peace. Can I sleep in her room tonight? We will see. She said I could keep her blue jumper. Jack looked out the window. We will sort all that later. Lena lowered her eyes. Children notice more than adults think they do. She noticed that his voice in the car was flatter than the voice in the cemetery. She noticed that he had stopped touching her shoulder. She noticed that when the driver asked if they should go straight home, Jack did not answer for several seconds because he was staring at his phone calculator. 500,000 libras. He tapped the number and looked at it again. It was not just money. It was escape. No more rented flat with damp in the walls. No more pretending to be charming for employers who saw through him in 6 months. No more borrowing, dodging calls, hiding from credit card companies. No more dating women who expected him to pay for dinners with cash he did not have. £500,000 could rebuild a man. Or, in Jack's case, reveal him. The trust fund had begun with Ella's parents. They had sold a house in Surrey and put money aside for Lena before they died. Ella had added to it with insurance, savings, and small investments she barely touched. By the time she became ill, the fund was worth just under £500,000. Not enormous to the truly rich, but to Jack it was a kingdom. Ella had been careful. Painfully careful. She knew what illness could do to a family. She knew sympathy could attract predators as quickly as love could. She had locked the money behind trustees, conditions, signatures, and a will drafted by a solicitor who did not scare easily. Jack had discovered that will by accident. Or so he told himself. In truth, he had been looking. 6 months before Ella died, while she slept after chemotherapy, Jack had opened the bottom drawer of the bedroom cabinet. He had told himself he was searching for paracetamol. He had found a folder labeled Lena, Trust and Future Care. Inside was a copy of the will. Everything to Lena. Funds held in trust until age 18. Professional trustee oversight. Jack Hunter to receive nothing. The sentence had burned into him. Nothing. After 3 years of hospital lifts, meal deliveries, sympathetic smiles, and sleeping beside a woman whose body was failing, Ella had planned to leave him nothing. He stood in the bedroom that night with the paper shaking in his hand, not from grief or betrayal, but fury. He had not looked at Ella. He had looked at the little girl asleep in the next room. Lena gets it all. That was the moment something final settled in him. If the law protected Lena, Jack would change what the law saw. It began with the story. A secret marriage was the easiest kind to invent after one person was dead. No wedding photos? Ella had wanted privacy because of her illness. No guests. She had been too weak for a ceremony. No announcement? They were waiting until after the next scan. It was emotional, plausible, and hard for casual observers to challenge. It dropped the idea into conversations like seeds. Ella and I have talked about making it official, he told the neighbor while carrying shopping bags. Paperwork does not matter to us, but it might matter for Lena, he told a nurse, loud enough for another nurse to hear. She wants me to have legal standing if anything happens, he told a man at the pharmacy. None of those people remembered the exact words later. They remembered the impression. And impressions, Jack knew, could be useful. Then came the documents. The marriage certificate was expensive. A man in a pub in Croydon introduced him to another man who knew someone who could produce novelty paperwork that looked less like a novelty and more like a crime. Jack paid in cash. He provided names, dates, addresses, and a sample of Ella's signature stolen from a bank form. The result looked good enough to fool anyone who wanted to be fooled. The will took longer. Ella's handwriting was difficult. Illness had changed it. On good days it was neat and rounded. On bad days it wavered. Jack used that to his advantage. He practiced late at night, filling pages with her name, then burning them in the kitchen sink. He copied the slope of her E, the loop in her G, the way she wrote Lena with a longer final stroke as if the name itself needed protecting. He wrote several drafts before he produced one that satisfied him. Ella Gray, being of sound mind, leave all my estate to my beloved husband, Jack Hunter. He added words about gratitude. Words about love. words Salo would never have used. Two witnesses were found through a betting shop contact. One was a delivery driver with debts. The other was a woman who thought she was sending something that would never be checked. Jack paid each £500 and told them to keep quiet. "Nobody gets hurt," he said. It was the kind of lie criminals tell other criminals when they need help pretending they are not criminals. The final touch was timing. He dated the fake will 1 month before Ella's death, when her medical notes showed she was weak but not legally incapable. Though close to death and it might look suspicious. Though early and people might ask why she never mentioned it. 1 month was perfect. Emotional. Last minute. A dying woman's change of heart. By the time Ella took her final breath in the hospice, Jack had already placed the forged documents in a folder under the spare tire of his car. He cried in the hospice room. The nurses thought it was love. It was relief. There was only one problem. Ella had seen more than Jack realized. She had not known everything. She had not known about the forged certificate or the witnesses or the hidden folder in his car, but in the final months of her life, the mask slipped often enough for fear to take root. Jack asked too many questions about the trust. He wanted to know which bank held the funds. He wanted to know how trustees were appointed. He wanted to know whether a guardian could access money for reasonable living expenses. At first Ella told herself he was worried. Then she noticed he never asked about Lena's bedtime routine, school fears, favorite books, or grief counseling. He asked about signatures, accounts, and control. So one rainy Tuesday, 6 months before she died, Ella asked a volunteer driver to take her to Richmond instead of home. Evelyn Shaw's office sat above a small bakery on a quiet street. It smelled faintly of coffee, paper, and lemon furniture polish. Evelyn was 52, with calm gray eyes and the sort of stillness that made liars talk too much. She had been Ella's solicitor for years, first helping with her parents' estate, then with Lena's trust. When Ella entered that day, Evelyn stood immediately. Ella was thinner than she had been at their last meeting. Her coat hung off her shoulders. Her scarf hid the hollows at her neck. But her eyes were fierce. "I need to make sure he cannot touch it," Ella said before she even sat down. Evelyn closed the office door. "Jack." Ella nodded. "Has something happened?" Ella looked at the photo on Evelyn's desk. Evelyn's own grown daughter, smiling at a graduation ceremony. "Nothing I can prove," Ella said. "That is the problem. He is kind when people are watching. Helpful. Charming. Everyone thinks he is some kind of saint for staying with me. But when he looks at Lena now, it is not like he is looking at a child. It is like he is looking at a locked door." Evelyn did not interrupt. "He keeps asking what happens if I change my mind. He says Lena needs a father more than she needs money. He says I am being cruel by not trusting him. And do you trust him?" Ella's answer came without hesitation. "No." The word seemed to cost her energy. She sat back, breathing carefully. "I want it written clearly. No matter what anyone says after I am gone. No matter what paper appears. No matter what story he tells. Everything goes to Lena. Jack is not my husband. He is not her father. He gets nothing." Evelyn's expression did not change, but something hardened behind her eyes. "Then we make it clear. We make it boring. Boring is useful in law. No drama, no gaps, no poetry. Used words that cannot be misunderstood." They revised the will that day. They confirmed trustees. They added a letter of wishes, not legally binding on its own, but powerful context. Ella wrote it slowly, stopping twice because her hand cramped. "To whoever reads this after my death. My daughter Lena is my only beneficiary. I do not wish Jack Hunter to inherit from me or control my daughter's trust. I am grateful for any kindness he has shown, but I do not want him to have access to Lena's money. This is my settled decision." At the end, Ella put down the pen and cried for the first time that afternoon. I hate that I have to spend my last months thinking like this, she whispered. Evelyn moved a box of tissues across the desk. You are not thinking like this because you are bitter, she said. You are thinking like this because you are a mother. Ella looked at her. Promise me. I will keep the original will here. I will record my attendance notes. I will remember this conversation. No, Ella said. Her voice was weak, but the command in it was unmistakable. Promise me that if he tries anything, you will stop him. Evelyn held her gas. I promise. 6 months later, Ella was dead. 7 days after the funeral, Jack made his move. The application did not look dramatic. Evil rarely does on paper. It arrived as a tidy set of forms, typed neatly, signed confidently, accompanied by supporting documents arranged in the correct order. Though a busy probate clerk, it was another sad file in a long list of sad files. Deceased, Ella Gray. Applicant, Jack Hunter. Relationship, surviving spouse. Supporting document, marriage certificate. Will, handwritten, dated 1 month before death. Sole beneficiary, Jack Hunter. There was a note, though. Jack had written it himself after studying examples online. My late wife Ella was a private person, particularly during her illness. She wished our marriage to remain quiet until she recovered. Sadly, she did not recover. In her final weeks, she expressed her wish that I should continue caring for her daughter, Lena, and manage the estate in accordance with her final will. It was manipulative in the way Jack did best. Not too much. Not melodramatic. Used enough to make a stranger feel unkind for doubting him. He also applied to be recognized as Lena's guardian for financial purposes. That was the real target. If he could establish himself as Ella's husband and the executor of the latest will, he could pressure trustees, challenge restrictions, claim care expenses, sell assets, and drain the estate slowly while appearing responsible. He did not need to empty the account in 1 day. He only needed access. Once he had access, he could invent reasons. School fees. Therapy. Housing. A car for school runs. A larger flat. Living costs. By the time Lena was old enough to ask where the money had gone, Jack planned to be somewhere warm, using a different surname. For the first 48 hours, nothing happened. Jack took that as a good sign. He began enjoying the performance. He posted a black and white photo of Ella on social media with a caption about love, loss, and duty. Hundreds of people reacted. Some wrote that he was a real man. Some called Lena lucky. Jack read every comment like applause. At home, the mask grew thinner. Ella's flat felt different without Ella in it. Her medication had been cleared away. Her hospital bed had been collected. Her blue jumper still hung behind the bedroom door because Lena cried when anyone touched it. Jack hated that jumper. It made the dead woman feel present. On the third night after filing the application, he stood in Ella's bedroom holding a bin bag. Lena appeared in the doorway wearing pajamas with moons on them. "What are you doing?" she asked. Jack turned. "Sorting things." "That's Mommy's scarf." "I know. You can't throw it away." He forced a smile. "We cannot keep everything, sweetheart. It is not healthy." Lena stepped inside and reached for the scarf. She said I could keep it. For a second, Jack did not move. Then he handed it over too slowly. "Fine. But no more drama." Lena hugged the scarf against her chest and backed out of the room. Jack watched her go, jaw tight. "No more drama." He said it again under his breath, not to comfort her, but to warn himself. Until the money cleared, he could not afford a complaint from a teacher, neighbor, nurse, or social worker. Children were dangerous because they repeated things. So the next morning he made pancakes. It cut them into a smiley face. He took a photo of Lena at the table and posted it with the caption, "First breakfast without mommy. We are taking it one day at a time." The comments poured in. "Stay strong, Jack. You are amazing. Ella would be proud." Lena did not smile in the photo. Most people did not notice. Evelyn Shaw noticed everything. She first heard about the application from a junior solicitor she knew in a probate office. The message was brief. "Evelyn, did Ella Gray marry Jack Hunter? Seeing paperwork that suggests he is surviving spouse and sole beneficiary. Thought you should know." Evelyn read it once. Then again. The office around her seemed to go very quiet. She did not gasp. She did not swear. She did not throw the phone. Evelyn had learned over 20 years that anger was most useful when stored, not spent. She opened Ella's file. The original will was there, sealed, signed, witnessed, date-stamped, and accompanied by her attendance notes from the meeting. She read Ella's words again. "No matter what paper appears." Evelyn's face became still. Then she began. The first call was to the General Register Office for a certified search. If Ella and Jack had married anywhere properly recorded in England or Wales, there would be a trail. Names, dates, district, entry number. The second call was to the witnesses listed on Jack's alleged will. Neither name meant anything to Evelyn. That itself was strange. A dying woman rewriting her entire estate usually chose someone close, or at least someone known to her. Not strangers with addresses in Croydon and Walthamstow. The third call was to a forensic document examiner Evelyn had used twice before. A patient man named Dr. Martin Bell, who could look at an ink line and hear the lie inside it. The fourth call was to social services. "I am concerned about a minor child," Evelyn said. "Her mother's estate may be under attack. You need to know who currently has day-to-day care and whether any temporary safeguards are in place." By the end of the day, Evelyn had filed a caveat to stop the grant of probate from going through uncontested. By the end of the week, she had requested an urgent directions hearing in the Chancery Division to preserve the estate and prevent Jack from accessing trust funds while the documents were investigated. She did not call Jack. She wanted him comfortable. Comfortable people make mistakes. Jack received the news in a watch boutique. He had gone to Harrods just to look. That was what he told himself. But he had already tried on 3 watches and allowed a sales assistant to bring out a Rolex he could not yet afford. He liked the weight of it. He liked the way the metal changed how his wrist looked. He liked the way the assistant called him sir. His phone buzzed. The message from his solicitor was short. "Evelyn Shaw has entered a caveat and claims to hold an earlier will. She disputes the marriage certificate and the later will. We need to discuss urgently." Jack stared at the screen. For 1 second, he did not understand the words. They looked like a language written for someone else's disaster. Then his body reacted before his mind did. His palm began to sweat under the watch. His throat tightened. A act rose behind his eyes. The sales assistant said, "Shall I adjust the clasp for you, sir?" Jack removed the Rolex and placed it on the velvet tray with unnatural care. "Not today." He walked out without another word. In the car park, he sat behind the wheel and read the message 4 more times. Earlier will. Disputes the marriage certificate. Disputes the later will. How? Ella had been weak. Ella had been isolated. Ella had trusted too few people. He had known about the solicitor, of course, but he had assumed Evelyn would send a letter, maybe ask a question, maybe be too late. He had assumed bureaucracy would work for him, that grief and paperwork and the ordinary laziness of institutions would carry him across the line. He had not expected a direct strike. He called his solicitor. "Can she do this?" "Yes," the solicitor said carefully. "If she has standing, and if she holds a will that contradicts yours, she can delay probate. It is not her money." "No, but if the earlier will names trustees or gives her relevant information, she can bring concerns forward. Jack, I need you to be very honest with me. Is there any reason the marriage certificate would not be verifiable? Jack went silent. Jack. Allah handled that. Handled what? The private ceremony. The paperwork. She wanted it quiet. His solicitor did not answer immediately, and that pause frightened Jack more than any accusation could have. Bring me everything you have, she said. Originals, not copies. And do not contact MS. Cho directly. That was exactly what Jack did next. He found Evelyn's office number online and called from a withheld number after closing time. A expected voicemail. Evelyn answered. Evelyn Shaw speaking. Jack lowered his voice. You are making a mistake. Mr. Hunter. The fact that she recognized him instantly irritated him. Allah wanted me to have that money. She wrote it down. You are dragging a grieving child through a legal battle because you cannot accept that your paperwork is outdated. If you believe that, your solicitor can provide evidence through the proper channels. You think you are protecting Lena? You are delaying everything she needs. 4th. Housing. Stability. Lena's immediate care is being handled. Her mother's money is not your emergency fund. A silence. Then Jack's voice sharpened. You do not know what Ella told me in private. No, Evelyn said. But I know what she told me in my office. I know what she signed. I know what she feared. And I know the difference between a grieving partner and a man trying to bully a solicitor after business hours. Jack's breathing changed. Careful. Evelyn's reply was quiet. I am very. That is why you should stop talking. She ended the call. Jack stared at the phone, stunned by the insult of being dismissed. That night, he did not sleep. Evelyn did not sleep much either, but for different reasons. She sat at her kitchen table with Ella's file spread before her. Rain moved against the windows. Her own house was quiet. On the fridge was a drawing her granddaughter had made, all suns and stick figures. Evelyn looked at it for a long time, then returned to the file. She was not sentimental in court. She did not believe tears made an argument stronger. But she had sat across from Ella. She had watched a dying woman use the last of her strength to build a wall around her child. That kind of trust did not end at death. By morning, the first results arrived. No marriage record. Not in London. Not in Surrey. Not in any district under the names Ella Gray and Jack Hunter within the relevant years. Evelyn requested a wider search to remove any possible doubt. Still nothing. Then Dr. Bell called. The alleged will is not right, he said. How not right? Many ways. He will put it properly in the report, but informally? Whoever wrote this studied her handwriting rather than naturally producing it. There are hesitations where a fluent writer would not hesitate. The pressure patterns are wrong. The capital G is copied from an older bank form, not from her later medical consent forms. And the signature is an imitation. A good imitation, but an imitation. How confident? Eek. Very eek. Evelyn closed her eyes for half a second. Send the report as soon as possible. The witnesses cracked faster than she expected. The delivery driver, a man named Paul Renshaw, denied everything for 12 minutes. Then Evelyn's investigator mentioned police involvement and conspiracy to commit fraud. Paul began sweating through his shirt. I did not know it was for a dead woman, he said. What did you think it was for? He said it was family paperwork. I said everyone knew. Did you see Ella Gray sign it? Paul looked down. No. Were you in the room with her? No. Had you ever met her? No. The second witness lasted even less time. She admitted she had signed in a cafe for cash and had never seen Ella in her life. By the time Evelyn filed her evidence, Jack's perfect paperwork had become a trap with his own fingerprints all over it. But the most painful evidence came from Ella herself. Lena's foster placement was temporary at first. Social services moved her from Jack's flat after Evelyn raised concerns about the estate and Jack's legal position. Jack protested loudly, calling it cruelty. Online, he posted a vague message about certain people making grief harder. His supporters offered sympathy. Then a social worker collected Lena's belongings. Among them was Ella's old phone. The battery was dead. The screen was cracked. Jack had tried to wipe it, but he had not understood cloud backups. Evelyn obtained the family's permission through the proper channels and arranged for the contents to be preserved. There were photos, voice notes, text messages, and a digital diary Ella had used during treatment. Most entries were ordinary and devastating. Lena ate soup today. He managed 2 spoons. Being bad tonight. Jack annoyed because nurse stayed late. Need to ask Evelyn again about guardianship. Lena must be safe. Then there was the entry written 3 weeks before Ella died. I do not trust Jack anymore. I wish I did. It would be easier to leave believing the person beside me was good. But sometimes he looks at me the way people look at a scratch card they have nearly won on. As if I am almost worthless now, but might still pay out. Evelyn read that sentence twice. Then she printed it and placed it behind the will. The first hearing was not the dramatic showdown Jack imagined. It was worse for him because it was calm. A civil judge reviewed the caveat, the competing wills, the lack of marriage record, the handwriting concerns, and the witness statements. Jack's barrister argued that grief, illness, and privacy explained the irregularities. Evelyn's counsel argued that fraud explained them better. Jack sat at the back of the courtroom in a charcoal suit, face carefully arranged into wounded dignity. He expected uncertainty. He expected delay. He expected to win time. Instead, the judge froze the estate, barred Jack from accessing any funds, referred the documents to the police, and ordered that Lena's care and trust arrangements be handled independently while the investigation continued. It was not yet a criminal conviction. But it was the sound of the door closing. Outside the court, a local reporter tried to ask Jack a question. Amy R. Hunter, did you forge Ella Gray's will? Jack pushed past him. No comment. Were you legally married? No comment. Why is there no marriage record? Jack turned then, anger breaking through the grief mask. Because vultures like you and that solicitor cannot leave a dead woman in peace. The clip went online that evening. At first, the comments were split. So many people still believed him. The handsome grieving partner. The man caring for a child. The victim of legal technicalities. Then the witnesses, statements leaked. Then the handwriting report was summarized. Then Ella's diary entry appeared in a national newspaper, with permission from the estate. Public sympathy moved like weather. Fast, cold, and unforgiving. Jack watched it turn against him in real time. His phone became a weapon. Messages arrived from people who had once praised him. Is it true? Tell me you did not do this. You used that little girl? You are disgusting. The neighbor who had called him a blessing refused to open her door. Aileen, the oncology nurse, blocked him. The support group women posted nothing, but one of them sent Evelyn a note that read simply, "Thank you for seeing what we missed." Then Chloe came forward. Chloe Bennett was 29, a hairstylist from Camden with glossy black hair and a taste for men who lied confidently. She had met Jack in a bar 4 months before Ella died. He told her he was single, temporarily living with an older sick relative because he was the only decent person in the family. Ella became Aunt Ella in his stories. Lena was never mentioned. Chloe liked the version of Jack he sold her. Charming. Verdant. Generous in theory, if not in practice. He talked about a new life coming soon. He said he was waiting for money tied up in a family matter. It promised Paris. It promised a flat. It promised that one day she would understand why he had to be patient. 2 weeks after Ella's funeral, Jack bought Chloe a ring. Not an expensive one. It told her it was temporary, a symbol until the real money arrived. When Chloe saw the news about Ella and Lena, she called him. "Who is the little girl?" Jack sighed as if she were exhausting him. "Do not believe everything you read." "Who is she?" "Ella's child." He helped out. "People are twisting it. You told me Ella was your aunt." "It was complicated." "Were you living with a dying woman while dating me?" "You are making this sound ugly." Chloe went very quiet. "It is ugly, Jack." It tried the voice then. "The soft one. The wounded one. The one that had worked at the cemetery. Chloe, I did everything for that family. He sacrificed years. Ella wanted me protected. Her solicitor is jealous and controlling. There is money involved, and people get greedy when money is involved." "Yes," Chloe said. "Apparently they do." She ended the call. 2 days later, she gave an interview. She sold it because tabloids pay for betrayal, then donated the fee to Lena's trust. In the interview, she described Jack's promises, the ring, the lies about Aunt Ella, and the night he had told her, "Drank, by Christmas, we will never worry about rent again." The public did not need a judge after that. They had decided. The criminal case went to Crown Court months later. By then, Jack looked different. Not physically destroyed, not yet. But the polish had thinned. His suit was still good, but it had been worn too often. His face was leaner. His eyes moved constantly. He had discovered that when a man builds his life on being believed, disbelief feels like suffocation. The charges were serious: fraud by false representation, forgery, using a false instrument, and attempting to obtain control of funds belonging to a minor. The allegation was simple enough for anyone to understand. Jack Hunter had pretended to be a husband. He had invented a will. He had tried to steal a dead woman's final gift to her child. The prosecution did not rush. They began with Ella. Not as a victim in the abstract. As a woman. A mother. A person who knew she was dying and still organized school forms, packed Lena's winter clothes, recorded bedtime stories, and wrote instructions for birthdays she would never see. The jury saw a photograph of Ella before treatment, laughing on a Breton beach with Lena on her shoulders. Then they saw a later photograph, taken in Evelyn's office, where Ella wore a headscarf and held a pen in both hands because one was not steady enough. The prosecutor's voice was calm. Ella Gray had very little control left over her life. Cancer had taken her health, her strength, and her time. But there was one thing she could still control: what happened to her daughter after she was gone. The defendant tried to take that from her. Jack stared straight ahead. The real will was shown first. Eveline took the stand. She wore navy, no jewelry except a wedding ring, and spoke with the kind of precision that made every word land cleanly. "Did Ella Gray ever tell you she was married to Jack Hunter?" the prosecutor asked. "No." "Did she ever describe him as her husband?" "No." "What did she say about him?" The defense objected. The judge allowed a limited answer based on Evelyn's attendance notes and the letter of wishes. Eveline looked at the jury. She said he was not Lena's father, not her husband, and not someone she trusted to control Lena's money. Jack's jaw flexed. The prosecutor asked about the promise. Eveline paused. "She asked me to make sure her daughter was protected if any document appeared after her death." "Why would she say that?" "Because she was afraid someone might try to use her death to change her wishes." Across the courtroom, one juror lowered her eyes. Then came the handwriting expert. Dr. Bell explained imitation in plain language. He showed enlarged images of Ella's genuine signature beside the signature on the alleged will. It pointed out pauses, pressure changes, unnatural curves, and copied formations. A forger often focuses on shape, he said. But handwriting is movement. The question's signature looks like someone drawing a route from a map, not someone walking a road they know. The jury understood that. The witnesses were next. Paul Renshaw looked miserable. He admitted he had signed the will in exchange for cash and had never seen Ella Gray. The second witness cried before the first question was finished. He said it was harmless, she said. He said it was only to tidy up family paperwork. The prosecutor asked, "Who said that?" She pointed at Jack. Him. Jack closed his eyes. But the courtroom had not yet heard the worst. A former flatmate named Darren Keats took the stand on the second day. Darren was broad, blunt, and visibly uncomfortable in a suit. He had known Jack before Ella, before the cancer, before the performance became profitable. "What did the defendant say to you about finding a partner?" the prosecutor asked. Darren shifted in his seat. He said he needed someone with assets. Someone vulnerable. Those were his words. Not exactly. He said, "The trick is finding someone who needs you more than you need them." A murmur moved through the gallery. The judge warned the room to stay quiet. Darren continued. He described a night shortly before Ella died when Jack came to his flat drunk and excited. He said it was nearly over. He thought he meant the illness, like he was sad. Then he said, "Once she goes, the hard part is done." The prosecutor let the silence sit. "What did you understand him to mean?" "The money," Darren said. He was talking about the money. The defense tried to paint Darren as bitter, unreliable, jealous. He admitted he disliked Jack. He admitted they had fallen out over unpaid rent. But he did not move from the core of his evidence. He was not grieving, Darren said. He was waiting. On the third day, the prosecution played the audio. Aja had recorded it on her phone months before her death. The file was short. The sound quality was poor. There was background noise, perhaps a kettle, perhaps rain. Then Ella's voice filled the courtroom. Seen. Tired. Alive. Jack, why are you asking about the trust again? He told you, it is for Lena. A pause. Then Jack. Not the cemetery voice. Not the public voice. This voice was sharper, impatient, stripped of honey. Lena is 7. She does not need £500,000. She needs a father. I am trying to be that, but you will not let me. Unless you do not trust me? Aja breathed slowly. I don't. 2 words. That was all. But they changed the temperature of the room. A woman in the gallery began to cry. One juror pressed a tissue to her mouth. Even the judge looked down at his notes for a moment longer than necessary. Jack's face turned a dull gray. The defense case was careful because it had very little room to move. Jack did not testify. His barrister argued that grief made memories unreliable, that Ella had been conflicted, that informal relationships were complex, that the witnesses might have misunderstood, that the paperwork might have been mishandled by someone else. But there was no marriage record. No real witness. No credible explanation for the forged signature. No reason Ella would cut out Lena after fighting so hard to protect her. And there was Jack's own behavior, the social media performance, the watch boutique, Chloe, the lies, the calls, the anger, the pressure. The prosecutor's closing speech was not loud. It did not need to be. The defendant wants you to believe in a secret marriage with no record, a final will with false witnesses, a signature that does not behave like Ella Gray's hand, and a dying mother who suddenly decided to leave her child nothing. Ask yourselves which is more likely, that every safeguard Ella put in place failed by coincidence, or that the man who stood to gain £500,000 created the paperwork that would give it to him. The jury went out shortly after lunch. Jack sat at the defense table, one leg bouncing so violently his solicitor touched his arm and whispered for him to stop. He looked toward the public gallery once. Evelyn was there, seated beside Lena's appointed guardian. Lena was not in court. Evelyn had insisted on that. A child did not need to watch adults discuss the price someone had put on her life. After just under 3 hours, the jury returned. Jack stood. The forewoman did not look at him. Guilty. 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 Each word landed with the force of a door locking. For the first time in the entire story, Jack had no performance ready. He did not cry. He did not rage. He simply stared, mouth slightly open, as if reality had made a mistake and might correct itself if he waited. It did not. At sentencing, the judge spoke plainly. You targeted a dying woman. You studied her vulnerability. You forged documents designed to override her final wishes. Most seriously, you attempted to deprive a bereaved child of the financial protection her mother had put in place. This was not an impulsive act. It was planned, sustained, and cruel. Jack looked down. The judge continued. He received a suspended custodial sentence, strict unpaid work requirements, and financial penalties. He was ordered to pay substantial costs. The forged will was declared invalid. The fake marriage certificate was treated as what it was, a false instrument. The estate remained with Lena's trust, protected by independent trustees. Jack was barred from any role in her care or finances. The money he had imagined spending remained exactly where Ella wanted it. With Lena. Outside the court, the cameras waited. Jack tried to leave by a side entrance, but there are few clean exits for a man whose lie has become public property. Reporters called his name. A true crime YouTuber shouted, "Was it worth it, Jack?" Someone in the crowd yelled that he should be ashamed to show his face. He kept walking. An egg struck the pavement near his shoe and burst across the stone. For 3 years, Jack had lived on borrowed trust. Now the bill had arrived. The aftermath did not come in one dramatic collapse. It came in humiliations, one after another. His landlord asked him to leave when the lease ended. The girlfriend he had been seeing after Chloe disappeared as soon as the headlines stopped making him exciting and started making him poisonous. Employers searched his name and found article after article, the cemetery con man. The fake fiancé fraudster. The man who tried to steal an orphan's trust. He tried using his middle name on applications. It did not help. He tried moving to Luton. The internet followed. He found network in a warehouse through an agency that cared less about reputation than availability. He stacked boxes under fluorescent lights and told anyone who asked that the media had lied. Most people did not ask twice. Not because they believed him, but because he was no longer interesting up close. Without the suit, without the grief, without the promise of money, Jack Hunter was just another angry man with a story that made him look worse every time he told it. The debt remained. The costs remained. The record remained. But the worst punishment, for Jack, was not poverty. It was irrelevance. He had wanted to become the center of Ella's story. The grieving partner. The noble stepfather. The man who inherited because he deserved it. Instead, he became a footnote in Lena's survival. Lena did not attend the trial. She heard only a softened version, given slowly by people trained to speak to children without crushing them. A man made bad choices. Your mummy's wishes were protected. The money she saved for you is safe. You did nothing wrong. At first, Lena asked whether Jack would come back. When told no, she did not look relieved in a dramatic way. Real children do not always give adults the emotional scenes they expect. She simply nodded and asked if she could keep her mother's blue jumper in her bed. She moved in with a foster family in Richmond, a couple named Anna and Mark who had a quiet house, a small garden, and a ginger cat called Biscuit. The first night, Lena slept with the woolen star in one hand and the blue jumper folded under her pillow. She woke twice. Anna sat outside her bedroom door until she fell asleep again. In the weeks that followed, Lena began drawing rainbows. No one suggested it. No therapist assigned it. She just drew them again and again. Rainbows over houses. Rainbows over cats. Rainbows over stick-figure women with blue jumpers. Rainbows over small girls standing in rain. One afternoon, during a visit, Evelyn found Lena at the kitchen table with colored pencils spread around her. "That is a very bright one," Evelyn said. Lena looked up. "Mummy said rainbows come after bad rain." Evelyn swallowed carefully. She was right. "Do you want one for your office?" "Very much." Lena selected the best drawing with great seriousness and wrote for Evelyn at the bottom in uneven letters. Evelyn framed it. It still hangs on her office wall. Clients sometimes ask about it. Evelyn tells them it is a reminder. Not of victory. She does not like that word for cases involving dead mothers and frightened children. It is a reminder that paperwork can be a shield. That careful words matter. That predators often count on people being too tired, too polite, too overwhelmed, or too trusting to check the details. And it is a reminder of Ella Gray. A woman who knew she was dying, knew the world would keep moving without her, and still found the strength to protect her daughter from a man who smiled at her funeral. 1 year after the burial, a small gathering took place at the cemetery. This time the weather was different. The sky was pale and clear. The grass had dried. Daffodils grew near the path. Lena wore a yellow cardigan over her dress and carried a bunch of white flowers. Anna and Mark waited a few steps back. Evelyn stood beside her, hands folded. Lena placed the flowers at the headstone. Ella Gray. Beloved mother. Forever loved. For a long time, Lena said nothing. Then she whispered, "The money is safe, Mommy." Evelyn turned her face away. Lena touched the woolen star at her neck. It was older now, a little frayed, but still intact. "And I have a cat. His name is Biscuit. He is naughty." A breeze moved through the trees. Lena smiled, small but real. That was the ending Jack had never imagined, because men like Jack do not understand love that has nothing to do with possession. He understood signatures only as tools. He understood grief only as theater. He understood a child only as access to money. Ella had understood something stronger. She understood that a mother may not be able to stay, but she can still leave protection behind. In a will. In a warning. In a solicitor's memory. In a child's hand wrapped around a woolen star. Jack thought death would silence Ella. Instead, it made every word she had written louder. He thought Lena was powerless. Instead, Lena became the reason everyone fought harder. He thought Evelyn Shaw was just a middle-aged solicitor with a file. Instead, she became the wall he broke himself against. Years from now, Lena may not remember every detail. She may forget the courtroom she never entered, the headlines adults tried to hide, the exact amount her mother saved, and the name of the man who tried to steal it. But she will remember this: when the rain came, someone held the line. When the lie appeared, someone checked the paper. When a greedy man reached for what belonged to a child, a promise made in a quiet office became stronger than his entire plan. That is why people kept talking about the case. Not because of the fraud itself. The world has plenty of fraud. Not because of Jack Hunter. Men like him are not as rare as they think. People remembered it because, for once, the timing worked. The right document was saved. The right person noticed. The right promise was kept. And the little girl who had lost almost everything did not lose the last gift her mother left her. So many people called it justice. So many said justice would have been Ella living long enough to raise her daughter. Both things were true. But on a grey London morning, when a man stood at a grave and smiled at the thought of £500,000, he believed he had already won. He had no idea that the dead woman had planned better than he had. He had no idea that the child he dismissed would become untouchable. And he had no idea that Evelyn Shaw, con, precise, and furious, was about to turn his perfect inheritance scam into the mistake that ruined his life. Because greed can forge a signature. It can buy witnesses. It can fake grief in the rain. But it cannot imitate a mother's love. And in the end, that was the one thing Jack Hunter could never counterfeit.